This is the Hunt Quietly podcast. I'm Matt Ranella. Hey, Gil, how you doing?
Good, man. How about yourself?
Good. Gil is a good name for a guy involved in a fishing nonprofit.
Yeah. I think so. Although we misspelled it. Mine's got one L. I don't know who was in charge of that, but I should probably complain.
Yeah, but that doesn't change the pronunciation, does it?
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It's all Gil.
Yeah, what's the name of your nonprofit again?
It's called the Downriver Project.
Downriver Project. Okay.
Yeah, Downriver's one word. Downriver Project.
Okay. And what's your role with them?
I'm the director.
Okay. Is that your full-time job?
No, it's just a volunteer thing. We are all volunteers. It's just something that we kind of do on our spare time.
You know, that makes you the only other person I know besides the people in the nonprofit that I co-founded.
Yeah.
That are involved in a nonprofit where there's no paid staff.
No paid staff.
Oh, that's not true. I interviewed.
Well, now what about Mountain Pursuit? Aren't they a little bit like that? Because I listened to that episode and it seemed like they were pretty similar.
Yeah, no, there's them too. I don't even know if he does that anymore. But there's also the South Dakota Antelope Foundation, I think it's called.
Oh, nice. Okay, all right.
Yeah,
and they protect antelope in South Dakota.
Yeah,
huh.
Yeah. They do a lot of woven wire fence removal.
Interesting.
Because antelope struggle to get over fences.
Well, we see it with just white-tailed deer and any kind of wire fence in our part of the world. I have to think it's even worse for any kind of barbed wire up there, right?
Well, this is woven wire.
Oh, woven wire. Okay.
Yeah, the squares. It's like sheep fence, they call it.
Oh,
and antelope don't like to jump fences. They can, but boy, are they reluctant to. And a lot of times they go underneath them. So, and that kind of messes them up, scratches up their back, pulls their hair out. And, and so the sheep fence can be real constricting for them. And
I imagine that's a lot of working with private landowners. Is that how they do that? A lot of education.
Yeah. But yes, sure, absolutely. There's a lot of that. Florida, right? That's where you're at.
That's where I'm from. It's not where I am anymore. I just did a move up to Connecticut last couple of days. So I actually had to buy this chair today, so I would have a chair to sit on for this conversation. So I just moved up here to go to law school. So I'm gonna spend 3 years doing that, and then hopefully be back in Florida.
So you're in an empty apartment?
I'm in an empty apartment. I've got an air mattress, I got a sleeping bag, and that's about it.
Dang. You're just gonna
big change.
You're gonna slowly outfit it over time?
Slowly outfitted over time. I've been going to some antique stores. I did manage today to buy a half model. I'll show it to you. I kind of like it. There you go. I bought this today. So I think that's kind of nice.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at a wooden plaque, the carving of a sailing vessel. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So my dad for a lot of his life has been a boat builder, and I grew up around him building boats, but also building boat models. And so I saw this today at a thrift store, and it reminded me a little bit of home. So I thought,
do you think you're going to miss Florida?
Yeah. Oh, I already miss it. Yeah. It's a special place. I'm from a really particular part of Florida. I'm from a pretty interesting coastline that I know we're going to talk a lot about. But there's just nothing like it anywhere else that I've ever found.
And what part of Florida is that?
Florida Panhandle, but particularly this area called the Forgotten Coast.
Okay.
Which is about 3 counties. So Wakulla, Franklin, and Gulf counties in Florida. But we've got about 1 million acres of public land, which for Florida is quite a bit.
That's a
And
lot
so
along the coast.
a lot of it's along the coast. So we've got, for instance, the St. Mark's National Wildlife Refuge. That's about 70,000 acres along the coast. And then when you move inland a little bit, we've got national forests. Apalachicola National Forest, I think, is a little north of 500,000. And then we've got state forests and a patchwork of wildlife management areas and state parks. And it sort of creates this mass of just, I think, a little over 1 million acres.
That's awesome. How far can you
It's
get
great.
from a road in there?
Oh, from a road? That's a good question. Pretty far, I bet. I don't know. I would say like from a major road, you mean like a blacktop?
No, like this the furthest you could get from somebody's car.
Hmm. Far.
Anybody's car.
I don't
Like
have an
5 miles, you
far.
think?
Oh, more than that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Oh,
Man, so you could get way back in there and not see
yeah.
anybody.
Yeah, you should be able to get way back in there. Yeah. I mean,
what would you see? What would you see back in there if you were way back in the stink?
If you're quiet, you'll see a lot. I mean, we've got
gators. Do you see a gator?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we've got a lot of gators. We've got deer and turkey and black bear and bobcat and certainly our share of alligators. It depends. I mean, the more freshwater areas, you're going to see more of the gators. And sometimes they'll crawl up in the marshes. My uncle happens to live out in one of the more secluded parts of our national wildlife refuge, and he normally has an 8 or 10 footer each year, at least at some point. And one of the jobs I had,
he shoots one every year.
No, he doesn't shoot one every year. He just sees them. He just looks at them. Yeah. He traps
have you
a lot
ever
of hogs,
eaten?
so.
Have you ever eaten gator?
Oh yeah. We eat gator. Yeah.
You eat it fairly regular.
You can eat it regularly if you want to. Like there's little roadside food stands that'll sell it to you.
Mm-hmm.
I've got some buddies that hunt gator. You can put in for a tag every year, and there's an annual gator hunt. It's done by county, and we like eating gator. And one of my jobs at one point in this life was to take people and put them on a big tour boat. And I'd take them down a river, take about 40 people down a river in our local state park, and I'd show them gators, and I'd show them manatees, and I'd show them all sorts of bird life. And one of the things that all the kids, they'd run up, they say, "What are we going to see a manatee? Are we going to see this turtle or that turtle or whatever?" And I would never guarantee anything, but I'd say you're going to see 20 gators. I can promise you 20 gators at least. And I don't think I ever failed to deliver on that.
Wow.
So that's Wakulla Springs State Park, which is just a magnificent spring-fed river. It happens to be the biggest and deepest freshwater spring in the world, they say, and has a lot of history and a lot of cool critters out there.
The manatees need fresh water.
The manatees like the spring-fed freshwater, so
don't they need
they
it
do
to
fine
drink
in the Gulf of Mexico? They do. They do fine in the Gulf of Mexico. I don't. That's a good question. I don't think they do.
Oh, well, that's okay. I'm going to pause. We got to get to the bottom of this.
Sure.
So we've ascertained that the manatee needs to drink fresh water. Is that your understanding?
I think that's what we've just learned. Yeah. So
the reason I strongly suspected that was the case is because there's this island I go to in the Bahamas quite frequently. And a number of years ago, there were 2 manatees out there, and the locals were blown away because they were like, "Where are they drinking?"
Yeah. Well, we have, in our rivers, so the situation for us is that the manatees really come up there in the wintertime.
Oh, they go up the river. They're in the ocean in the summer, and they go up the river in the winter?
They do a lot of traveling, it seems, in the summertime. And so they'll go up, as I understand it, throughout the Gulf and all the way up the coast up to about South Carolina. But in the wintertime, the Gulf starts to get cold. And so we have these really special springs that, are just, in a lot of cases, crystal clear and have a lot of vegetation for the manatees to munch on. And so they'll come up in the wintertime to those springs because those springs are always about the same temperature. They're always about 69 or 70 degrees
How
year
far are
round.
they from the coast, the springs?
So the one that I worked at was probably about 12 miles
Oh, so you're kind of
via
going
the
through the
river.
bayou and the swamp and everything, get way back in there, and there's a manatee?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Oh,
you can find them in
wow.
all sorts of places. You can find them,
Wow.
and there's like little manatee nurseries. There are even more secluded little spring runs where the manatees will hang out and they'll give birth, and sometimes you'll see them nursing. Sometimes there'll be twins. Manatees can have twins.
Oh.
So it's a really fun animal, and everybody gets excited. It's a
Oh, I'd
good
love to
success
see
story
one.
too.
I didn't
Yeah.
I didn't see these two that I was just telling you about, so I've never
Oh,
seen them.
okay. Oh, yeah.
Um,
Well, we can find you some manatees if you're ever in Northwest Florida.
have you ever seen a hippo?
No.
I just went to Kenya back in February,
Yeah.
and those things are crazy. They, we camped out on the along this river, and down below where our camp was, there was probably 15 of them in the river. And for 2 days, I never saw anything but above their eyeballs, just
Yeah.
the top of they never
Yeah.
come out of the water. And then finally I got to see one out of the water because they come out at dark. I saw
Yeah.
one come out at dark, and then we spotlighted some a few days later. But what I was getting at is what I was going to tell you is, man, those things, you could be out 5 miles from the nearest river or whatever, 10 miles, just
Yeah.
out, and you come across like a little mud hole, a little pond or something. Maybe that's as big as, just 20 feet around, but it's deep, and they'll be in there. They find any little spot where they can get underwater for the day because they travel miles and miles from water at night to feed.
Yeah.
And then, so yeah, anytime you get near water, like the guides are like, don't go stepping up to that edge of that water.
What is the safety briefing? I mean, do they tell you, is there a technique once one, is headed towards you? Is there anything you can do, or is it just that's lights out?
They never told us that. They never gave us any tips like that. They just, for the most part, they just made it so that wasn't a possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. Good for that. And you made it.
Yeah. So, is Pensacola in the Golden Coast?
It's not part of the Forgotten Coast. It's a little bit west of us.
Forgotten Coast. Golden Coast is in Africa. Okay.
But yeah, we do have the Emerald Coast though, and I think Pensacola does represent part of the Emerald Coast.
Oh.
So that's just a little bit west of us. But yeah, same part of Florida, same ecology basically, some sandy beaches, some swamps. We have some barrier islands, which is a little bit different.
Okay. Is it east? Is Pensacola east of the Forgotten Coast or west of the Forgotten Coast?
West of the Forgotten Coast.
Okay.
West of the Forgotten Coast. So the Forgotten Coast would be south of Tallahassee if you need a city. If you need a landmark, you're thinking south of Tallahassee. You make a beeline straight for the coast, and you're right smack dab in the middle of the Forgotten Coast. You would be in my home county, Wakulla County, at that point.
Okay. So I'm really interested in highlighting conservation organizations that fit particular criteria. One of them is that they're honest. And in your case, that's not even an issue because you guys aren't even taking in any income.
Not really. We will take a donation. If folks are
sure. No, yeah, right. But that goes right back into the thing.
But it goes right back into the thing. It goes to yard signs and flyers. That's what it goes.
Yeah, yeah. And so honesty is good because a lot of these big nonprofits, there's a lot of dishonesty. And I won't bore you with all the details on that, but man, we've looked into some of them, and some of them are deeply problematic. And then, I don't know if you picked up on this, but our little group, we don't think these orgs should be dabbling in recruitment and fishing and hunting recruitment. It just makes them the advertising arm for the hunting industry instead of conservation organizations. So You guys don't do that either. So I'm a big fan of the Downriver Project. There's
Thanks, man.
some other little nonprofits that I really like, or I'll just mention a few real quick. That
Yeah.
There's the one they operate in the Southeast. Turkeys for Tomorrow. Are you a turkey hunter?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, have you
I am a
heard of
turkey
them?
hunter. Yeah. Yeah, I have. I have.
Okay, yeah.
I know about them from the internet and then also from a little bit of your episode as well.
Okay, yeah, yep. And then there's the guy that used to be the CEO of Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, Land Tawney. He started.
Oh, yeah.
You heard
He's
about
been
his?
doing some stuff with the public land grab, right?
Yeah, his new group is
Yeah.
called American Hunters and Anglers, and
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
pretty good group. They they're a. Do you know what a 501c4 is?
Yeah, it's a political action committee. Is that what that is?
Yeah, I guess with 501c3s, you can only devote 20% of your effort to lobbying, and you can't back specific candidates.
Right.
But with a 501c4, you can do 100% lobbying and endorse candidates. So what he's trying to do is draw attention and support candidates that are aligned with the sportsman,
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
terms
And
of
he spits bars too,
public
man.
land and
Yeah.
conservation. Yeah.
Yeah, he goes on good rants. I really
Yeah. Oh,
appreciate
yeah.
it.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like that group is growing fast. I mean, he just started. I had him on the podcast like 6-8 months ago. It seems like it's like going good. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a bunch of other ones that I
Yeah.
like. Little ones, Howl for Wildlife. They make
Mm.
that their whole thing is about making hunters aware of legislation that proposed legislation that could affect
Mm.
them so that they can mobilize and fight it.
Oh, that's awesome. I haven't heard of them. I'll look them up. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, oh man, I know I'm forgetting some other ones that give me hope, but I really like mine. Hunters for Access. Did you pick up
Mhm.
on what we do?
Yeah, I think so. I think y'all are basically trying to make it so that, maybe there's a shift away from the kind of the pay to play model, right?
Yeah.
A little bit more let's say, keeping things quiet and small, right?
Well, there's two things. There's the hunt quietly thing. This is what
Mm. Okay.
this podcast, the Hunk Wiley podcast, whatever. But we also are nonprofit Hunters for Access. The only thing we do is we raise money and then buy gifts with it that we give away to landowners that are enrolled in
Mm.
state access programs.
Nice. Nice. That's
So,
great. Yeah.
any of these state access programs? I
We don't
doubt
I don't think we
Florida.
have that in the Southeast.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think you do either. Maybe some other states. I don't think Florida has one. I'm kind of familiar with most of them now. I feel like here
Is
we
it like a
have.
hunting lease that's public? Is that functionally what it is?
Uh, so typically they're run by the state fish and wildlife agency, and they'll be funded by license sales
Mm-hmm.
and or they're funded through the farm bill.
Mm-hmm.
States
Yeah.
can apply for these grants. It's called VPA HIP, Voluntary Public Access Habitat Improvement Program. And that the way they typically work, like I'll just describe ours here in mine. The Montana one's called block management. But
Okay.
the different states, they're called different things. In
Yeah.
North Dakota, it's called plots. In Wyoming, it's called access. Yes. In Kansas, it's called WEHA, Walk-in Hunter Access. This acronym, et cetera, et
Okay.
cetera. But like here, ours has 6.9 million acres enrolled in it.
Wow.
Yeah, this is all private land and landlocked public. And the landowner gets some amount of money. I can't remember, $15 a hunter a day.
Okay, good.
And they can orchestrate the permissions in a variety of different ways. It could be that the landowner decides that you contact the block management office at Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and make a reservation there, or that there's a sign-in box and you get your permission, you just self-sign in, or that you go up to the rancher's door and bang on the door and get your permission slip that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, the only things we do is give appreciation gifts to landowners that are enrolled in those programs. So like you make a donation and that donation, all of it goes to that. And the only other thing we do is work projects on participate.
You got to think a landowner isn't used to that kind of appreciation, right? That's got to be nice for them to kind of know that it means something to folks.
Yeah.
That it's not just a transaction. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're highly touched by this. A lot of them, they're very appreciative of us showing appreciation, I guess. And a lot of people just do this stuff of their own fruition. They'll, even though it's the property's enrolled in a state access program, a lot of hunters will go and say thanks anyway. Bring the guys some jerky or whatever, But, there's two things. It's like these landowners could probably make more money. In a lot of cases, they could make more money if they leased out their land.
Yeah. And you mentioned that, I'm a new listener, but you mentioned that, I think, in an episode where somebody went up and banged on the door and offered him 20 grand or something like that. And that was the end of public access. Yeah.
Yep. That was a ranch that was enrolled in block management. And who knows how often that happens, and they're like, hey, why don't you get out of this block management and I'll just give you 20 grand instead, And then the other thing is so that they could get more money in a lot of cases by leasing it out. The landowner could. And the other thing is they got to put up with some BS from people like bad actors, people littering, people driving where they're not supposed to, people leaving the gate open.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah. Tell me about what you guys do.
Oh man. Yeah. Well,
are you, first of all, I got to ask this because I'll get distracted if I don't.
Sure.
Are you still going to be doing this?
Yeah. I'm still going to be doing it. I'm going to do it remotely. I'm going to law school so I can get better at this kind of thing. And so this will be a vehicle to keep doing that. And to make sure it's not the other way around. It's not
gotcha.
Oh gosh, I'm interested in the law, so I want to do environmental this or that. No, it's like it's this. This is where it starts.
You're interested in the environment, so you're doing law.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, exactly. Okay.
Yeah. And so yeah, our organization, let's see, we've been around since 2021. And we've had a few different scuffles, we'll say, with different folks who have tried to come into our community and one way or another threaten our waterways. And so the first one of those was in 2021. We had a county government in my home county, and they purchased some land overpriced from a former county commissioner, one of their former colleagues. And they wanted to use this overpriced piece of land to dump wastewater. And where they were going to dump the wastewater, it just so happened that was the bullseye of the most vulnerable part of our groundwater system. And so that wastewater was going to flow about a quarter of the time to the spring that I just mentioned, where I used to be a boat captain, and about 3/4 of the time down to the coast where we have our oyster farms. And so that was enough of a cartoonishly evil idea that we got a little bit organized.
Okay. Before we attempt any forward moves, I got to fill in some gaps here.
Yeah.
So
let's do it.
Why? Why? Okay. Where's the wastewater coming from?
So this is municipal wastewater. So one of the unfortunate things about our part of Florida is that we do have folks moving there. And so we do have some suburbanization, and that with that comes wastewater, and there's a sewer system, and it's fine to have a sewer system. It's good to have a sewer system, but you got to be responsible with where you dump your treated sewage. And this was not an example of being responsible.
Yeah, I remember like 5, 6 years ago, wasn't there just a ton of fish die-offs there and red tide and all that, and that a lot of that was due to sewage?
Yeah, Tampa Bay, Indian River Lagoon down there, they've got big problems because what happens when you have sewage and when you have even treated wastewater is it does contain nitrogen, and with nitrogen it supercharges the plant life. You get all this algae, and the algae
You
can
know what they call
suck up
that,
the
don't you?
oxygen. Eutrophication, right?
Yeah, right. Isn't there
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
zone of a hypoxia in the Gulf
It's
of
like a
Mexico?
dead zone. Yeah, there's a dead zone
It's
out
still
there.
that's still a thing.
I think that's still a thing. Last I was aware, that's still a
Okay.
thing. Yeah.
All right. So when you said it was one of their former colleagues, was it like a sweetheart deal?
It was a deal. I mean, it was something where you had somebody who had been sitting on that board not too long, maybe 8 or 10 years prior, but certainly was still a relevant player, had been a relevant player for a long time. And, he's a big landowner. He owns a lot of tracts around our county. And there was this quiet meeting in December of 2020, right before Christmas, and nobody was really watching, and they just kind of slipped this deal through, and all of a sudden we learned that our county owned this parcel that they wanted to dump wastewater onto, and there were sinkholes. It was in a floodplain. It's
Oh
really
my
sandy,
God.
porous soil. It was a silly thing. It was a really silly idea, and I think the commission at the time probably didn't expect anyone to notice, or if they noticed, were they going to care? And even if they cared, were they going to get organized? And it just so happened that we did care enough to organize, and that became the Downriver Project.
Okay, and when you say we, it was you and who else?
Oh, it was me, a buddy from high school. We had eventually a handful of kind of volunteers that were moving in and out of the organization at their ability to be involved. The really the flashpoint and the moment I would call the genesis of the organization was that we got we got annoyed enough about this to kind of start maybe a Facebook page and a website. I think it was initially.
You guys are
And
awfully young to be so civically minded, I must say.
well, when you grow up
Which is
watching,
freaking great. Don't get me wrong,
no, no, no. Well, I think a lot of it for us has been you grow up and you watch things die. And I didn't get into all this, and I can if you're interested. But the the childhood that I experienced was really wonderful. I mean, you just falling in love with this place that I've just done an attempt at describing. I mean, it's a magical ecosystem. And you get to go fishing, and you get to see all these critters. And I grew up next to the wildlife refuge, so it was really a lot of fun. But then you see, well, hang on, why is the river gone from crystal clear to green, and why is it turning brown? And what's going on with where are the oysters going, right? When I was a kid, my feet were always sliced up because I was always walking in the salt water, and I was always stepping on oysters. I always had cuts on my feet, and then it seems like the oysters kind of started to go away, and we had all these changes in our water, and then we had an oil spill that crashed our seafood economy. A lot of our culture is commercial fishing.
Oh, that was
And
what was that, the Deepwater Horizon?
yeah, the BP
Okay.
oil spill.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And the oil didn't quite get all the way to us, but it was still enough to just wreck the economy for years and years. And then there was dispersants, and there's still questions today as to whether the dispersants for the oil may have had an impact on our ecology, and changes in the rookeries and the bird life, all sorts of things like that. So at a certain point, I think you just like you have, and like folks do, and the other nonprofits that you've hosted, you just get fed up and you say, all right, fine, it's time to get organized and figure out how we can have an impact on these systems that have failed us so consistently.
Yeah.
And that's what this was, is it was really it was just kind of boiling over. And finally it's like, all right, you cannot dump wastewater here. This is an absurd place to dump wastewater. And it's us doing it to ourselves too. That's our local government. That's where we ought to have a voice more than anywhere else. And so that was a lot of it. But the genesis of it, though, the moment that I think we started was we started our little Facebook page and our little website, and we kind of thought, well, okay, we'll try to have a meeting and see if anybody shows up. And so on this rainy Sunday, we had this meeting at a horse pavilion that the owner had said we could use. And so we kind of thought, well, gosh, nobody's going to show up. Nobody's going to care. I mean, already it was a long shot that anybody was going to give a damn about this. And now it's a rainy day and it's muddy and it's gross. And we're sitting there at the horse pavilion, and then a car shows up, and then another car shows up, and another few sets of headlights. And before you know it, we had people trudging through the mud and coming into the pavilion. We had about 60 people in our little community show up.
Wow. Wow.
And that was when it was like, okay, maybe there is an appetite. Maybe we're not the only ones. And I think that folks find that in a lot of different contexts, that when you kind of take that first step, it's like, okay, like other people are interested too. You're not the only one that's been noticing it.
Yeah. That's great. So were you able to stop it?
Yeah, we stopped it. So that took about 8 months, and we finally stopped it. And we kind of thought we were done. We thought, well, that was great. We did that. Never want to do that again. It was a lot of work. And so then another thing showed up, and then another thing and another thing. And so we've done 4 of these now, sort of increasing levels, increasing complexity, increasing specter of threats too.
Mm-hmm.
Things are just, I mean, this last one, which I think is probably how, perhaps the one you were interested in hearing about was against
the one you told me is fascinating. I mean,
yeah,
I'd like to hear. I mean, if you got time, I'd like to hear about a synopsis of all of them. But I do have to mention that there's a friend of mine. I met him through the podcast. He's been on. He works for the Shellfish program, and
oh, great,
in Seattle.
Yeah.
And that's all he does is water quality monitoring.
Yeah. The shellfish guys, they have been, I mean, for us, it's oysters, it's oyster farmers. They have been
him too.
I mean, phenomenal allies for us.
Oh, I bet.
That's great. And that is a win-win industry, because what do you got? You got water filtration, and at the end of the day, you get a delicious product out of it.
Yeah.
And that is just, it's awesome. It's they're out there, and they are just doing such phenomenal work. And it's, and you look, under the bags of oysters that are out there on the oyster farms that we have, it's a totally different ecosystem than, a quarter mile away or even 100 feet away. Sometimes you've got all sorts of fish going up in there. You got sheep's head. You've just got, it's like it's supposed to be. You have biodiversity.
Yeah, because of all the habitat.
So much habitat.
How deep are those?
They float at the surface where we are. Now there are places where they sink them. There are places where they sink them, and I think there's different styles of oyster farming. But where we are, as far as I'm aware, I think everybody has their bags just barely submerged at the surface.
Okay, and then they're held up through flotation of some sort?
Yes. Yeah, they've got floats.
Yeah. Fish like when there's something floating in the ocean.
Yeah, man. Love the structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about, it doesn't have to be an encyclopedic account.
No.
But give me a sense of the other ones.
I'll give you the next one. So the next fight for us was, we had some folks, they wanted to do a development that was in a similar area that was also pretty vulnerable for our groundwater. It was really right around the corner from the wastewater dumping site. And they wanted to put 88 septic tanks there, which has the identical problem that we just described with eutrophication and with nitrogen. And so that was something where again, our county government was all for it. They voted for it. Our commissioners were, full steam ahead with it.
It's almost like these people
And
want to have shit in the water.
yeah, it's an interesting ideology. I mean, I think there are some folks on our commission that think that they're doing the right thing because property rights are paramount. And I
Okay,
understand that.
yeah,
I
yeah.
understand that. And I think that, to a large extent they should be. But when your property rights are interfering with my ability to drink out of my well, or somebody downstream their ability to have a productive oyster farm, or harming the jewel of our county, which is the spring that I've described, Ocala Spring, then I think there ought to be some consideration. So, but in that case, we really just organized a letter writing campaign. We didn't even have a meeting. I mean, there were lots of meetings involved in that first issue where we would show up with a few hundred people, and it was a whole spectacle. There is no spectacle in this one. We kind of figured out who the right contacts were with our state government, and the regulator for development in Florida is called the Department of Economic Opportunity. And so we were able to kind of just needle them a little bit and help them understand the importance of it. And they did something extraordinarily rare, which is they actually issued a letter recommending against that development. And so that almost never happens in Florida.
Oh,
And so that was a nice, win. It broke our way, and we managed to stop that development and then have it reconfigured to where it was much, much safer.
okay. You guys are getting good at this now. Now that was
So,
like a strategic strike right there.
yeah, there was some precision there in that one.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so we've gone at this point from, okay, this is our local government, and we're really trying to kind of brute force, just with lots of people showing up at meetings, and maybe they know what they're talking about, maybe they don't, maybe they're yelling, maybe they're a little bit tipsy from what they were doing before they showed up, right? There's a lot of ruckus,
Uh-huh.
and this one was a little bit more just, okay, we're gonna contact the right officials at the state level.
Yeah, yeah.
But that was pretty quick. The next one, though, that was when we had. So I've described our spring, Wakulla Spring. We have in Florida what's called a karst topography. So we have all these tunnels underground, right? That there are these
Mm-hmm.
caves that water flows through, and in North Florida we have just an incredibly sophisticated series of caves that deliver our water. We still don't really know how they work. We still don't know where a lot of them go, but we have these guys who try to help us solve those problems, and they're cave divers. And so cave divers have gone, and in our part of the state, they have mapped out a fairly impressive series of caves. And in fact, the Mount Everest of cave diving, the record contiguous cave dive, occurred in my part of Florida,
Oh.
in my hometown, and it was 26 miles. And folks, they swam 26 miles through these caves. You got to imagine oxygen tanks staggered strategically, and a continuous 26-mile
Well, how did
effort.
they get the oxygen tanks in there?
So they staggered those going in. So I think you go in a little bit, you put one in, and then, or maybe you put two at the first point, and then somebody goes in and they grab the one of those two and they go a little bit further, and they,
Uh-huh.
and then the last guy to do it, is he's got everything kind of staged for him along the
Yeah.
way. So it's an interesting thing, because what it means is we actually have some insight on how these underground rivers operate. And one of them is we've got this massive sort of underground superhighway that conveys huge volumes of water all the way from, parts of South Georgia, ultimately collects. And then right before it gets to our spring, it's this rushing corridor of water underground. Um, and it feeds, as I mentioned earlier, the deepest freshwater spring in the world, right? Wakulla Spring. So this is important because there's an enormous amount of public land that surrounds it. There's been huge state and federal investments, to make sure that these lands are protected, these ecosystems. We've got great duck hunting habitat, we've got great fishing, that all this can survive and thrive. Well, we had an oil company come in, and they wanted to build a 16 pump mega gas station right on top of that cave.
What?
Yeah. And so, you know, it was just,
Oh, okay. Let
again,
me ask you this: is the only reason that society knew that the cave was happened to be right there because of that dude that did the diving?
yeah, yeah, it was the
Really?
team.
So if it wasn't for that dude that went the 26 miles, they wouldn't have had it mapped out and they wouldn't have known.
If it wasn't for the cave divers, we would not have. Somebody might have known there was a cave there, but to understand the details of the connection and how it feeds our spring,
Okay.
we never would have known. We
Okay.
never would have
You
understood.
wouldn't have understood the anatomy of the cave.
No, no.
Okay.
And we may not have known the location of the cave.
Okay.
Um, so there's sort of a sinkhole there. So it's, folks would have some sense that there's something going on,
Right, right, right.
but that this is the super highway. I don't know if we would have done that.
All right. So I'm imagining now that there's this, what's it, the spring called?
Wakulla.
Wakulla.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's this cave full of water flowing towards McCullough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How
Wakulla
far
with a W, but yeah.
Wakulla? I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
How
No,
far is the proposed gas station site from Wakulla?
It's about 8 miles.
Okay.
8 miles underground.
Okay.
So it's sort of a meandering 8 mile.
And then the other question, I hope these are questions that are of general interest, but I'm just trying to figure it out.
Sure.
How this all works. How far underground is the cave?
That's I think it's not very far. I mean, I think it's like 15 or 20 feet. It's not far at all.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. It's really not far. And in fact, it's close enough and it's fragile enough that there's questions. I mean, can you put something that heavy there without it collapsing?
Yeah, semi trucks driving in there and stuff.
And it happens frequently that someone will try to build something in Florida and whoopsie, it got swallowed by a sinkhole, right?
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah.
So this company, I mean, they were an out of state company. They were coming from Georgia and they just, they really wanted to build a gas station at this particular corner. And it's a busy intersection. They're thinking, well, this is going to be a good spot to sell gas. And that's true. I think it would be a great spot to sell gas. But we had, in that case, now we're dealing with an opponent that has a lot of money. They've hired the right people locally. They've hired politically connected consultants locally, right, to help push this through. They run a regional chain of gas stations that are well known and that are, I think pretty popular. I used to go when I was a kid get Slurpees at their gas station. And then we have also, again, a county government that really wants just to make sure everything happens all the time, right? No matter what, we want it to happen. So we're dealing with a lot of these same, local politicians. And this is a long story. And I think one of the interesting things about this, hopefully perhaps to the listeners is more about like the strategy involved in all of these rather than just the details of each. But I'll say that it took about a year and a half. We went round and round. We had multiple meetings with hundreds of people showing up. This was again a brute force, a community based effort. We got on,
and you had a lot of support with this one, I would imagine.
Yeah, I don't think anybody wanted this to happen. I mean, I don't know who, other than the 5 people sitting on the county commission.
You'd have to really like Slurpees.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, it's like, I've never run out of gas at that intersection, right? Like, I mean, why? Why do we need it there?
Yeah, and you're not. That's like it's not like you're trying to just blanket say no. You're just trying to say not here. Please, just not here.
Yeah, I mean, my truck burns gas, but you don't have to have gas everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And so it was a really ridiculous situation, and so the public really responded forcefully on that one. And that's when we started an Instagram. And that's when we kind of were like, all right, we got to really figure out how to do this organizing thing. And maybe this isn't going to just be a 1-off or a 2-off. And okay, now we need to be an organization and take it a little more seriously. But so there were a lot of meetings. There was a lot of public response. A year went by and then the gas company had kind of quieted down and they were kind of acting like maybe they weren't going to do it. And then on my 27th birthday, July 27th of 2023, we learned that with 10 days notice, they were coming back. And so they sprung this surprise attack. And I was living in another state at the time. I had to move home. I had to sell my car. I had to do all these things.
You were doing all that to fight this?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was like, I gotta get back home. I gotta be part. My job became remote at that point. And so there was a lot that I was lucky to just be able to do to get back to deal with it. I mean, I was really fortunate that everyone was understanding. But anyway, so then we organized the response at this meeting, which was I think August 7th of 2023, where we had 400 angry hunters, fishermen, seafood workers, oyster farmers, right? Exactly the crowd you want,
Right,
exactly the
right.
crowd you need, show up at the county commission meeting. And that day was in the middle of a heat wave. And I had a little pocket thermometer and I clocked 119 degrees outside in the parking lot.
Boo.
And the reason that matters is because our little county commission chambers can't hold but about 150 people. And so there was an overflow of a couple hundred, maybe 250 outside, and they were forced to stand in that heat, and they refused to move. They refused to leave. They were going to stand up for their springs, for their resources, for their tourism economy, for their hunting, for their fishing, for this culture that we are so fortunate to get to be part of. And basically they couldn't have the meeting. I mean, they tried. The county commissioners really wanted to have the meeting, and eventually they just kind of gave up and they said, all right, we're going to have to, we're going to have to come back to this at another time because there are going to be lawsuits after lawsuits based on the way this meeting has been run and conducted, just because of the crowd and just because of the safety hazards that were present. So at that point we got, and this is a lesson that I think is really important for folks who are interested in organizing in their communities and elsewhere, we got a lot of press coverage. We got a statewide press blitz. We were in
Oh, I
Orlando
bet.
Sentinel, and we were in, the Politico, Florida, and all these different outlets covered the story. And it really got a lot of attention, and it got so much attention that we had our state representative and our state senator become very interested in the issue. And so they worked it out to where they showed enormous courage and leadership. And they took this issue to the state legislature and got $3.5 million to purchase this land, not just from the gas company, but also all the surrounding land. So about, another 230 acres or so that was also vulnerable that one day could be developed. They wanted to make sure they got that too. And they made sure that gas station died. And it was really cool. It also, though, it shows, I think, a pretty startling conclusion where it was easier to get the state legislature to get involved than it was to get our local officials to do the right thing in the first place. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there is something there where you can find creative avenues, and a lot of times folks at the state level are going to be receptive. And I'm so proud to this day of these two lawmakers, and they were also both essential in this latest issue that we've been dealing with. But it's a really, I think, a great example of folks doing the right thing and really stepping up.
Oh, I'd be proud of your community members as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So yeah.
And yeah.
Just what I mean, the folks that were at that meeting that didn't happen. I'm kind of impressed that they understand the geology and the ecology of the system well enough to be pissed.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. I mean, they do. And we kind of, I mean, I don't know that everybody understands the details, and I certainly don't, of how all the different caves flow and, the various, sinks and swallowts and everything and how it's connected. But what they do know is that building a fueling facility on top of the Wakulla Springs cave is a really dangerous idea, right? Mm-hmm. They get that putting a bunch
Yeah,
of fuel
yeah,
on top of an underground river is a problem.
yeah. I guess they didn't have to know a whole lot, but they had to go like, there's a big cave down there with a bunch of water in it, and it goes into this really important spring.
Yeah,
And if
yeah,
one of these gas tanks starts leaking or whatever, that's a
yeah,
bad deal.
yeah.
And I gotta imagine you build a gas station in a place like that, the chances that it ends up leaking are higher than at another site.
Oh yeah. Well, and we didn't get into any of this, but I mean, this company has a horrible track record. There were, dozens of sites that they've contaminated. They did one in our own county. It was like down the road from where they were trying to build the other one that they had gotten, in a lot of trouble before because they had contaminated so much soil, right? Like this is just, and companies are allowed to do this stuff because there's not normally a check. And so
Mhm.
sometimes I think the people just have to provide the check, even when it should be the government.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you got to force their hand sometimes.
It varies so much from administration to administration. There's just more bifurcation now than ever between environmental regulation and environmental deregulation. Uh, I'm glad you're doing what you're doing, man. I'm glad
Well,
you're doing what you're doing.
turns out it's kind of fun sometimes too. There is that.
Yeah, well,
It
especially when
is.
you've been so successful.
Well, and it surprises me. I mean, every one of these, I kind of have a hard time conveying just like how outgunned it felt like we were at the time. Like every one of these, I was like, "There's no way in hell we're ever going to be able to do this." And we still haven't lost. I mean, we're still waiting. Like it'll happen eventually. I know,
Sure.
but it hadn't happened yet. And I think a lot of it is just folks are fed up. And there is an energy there that is, I think it carries nationally, honestly. But I know even, in the rural South, like the hardest part isn't like convincing people that the thing is a bad thing. The hardest part is convincing people that it's okay to show up and like, we're kind of taught that you're, I think in a lot of cases, you're kind of taught, well, that's something for other people. That's what people in, out west and up north do. They show up and they holler at meetings and all this. And so making it something that folks can feel comfortable showing up and
Uh-huh.
participating in,
Right.
and making sure that it doesn't boil over very often. And when it does, that it's with good reason. You've got to be sparing. Not everything is a crisis, right? And
Right.
I think a
Right.
lot of
Right.
folks, they hear, oh, show up to this meeting, or, oh, there's a protest. And they think, oh boy, that's not for people like me. Even if they do think that the resource is worth protecting. And that's why I think also
No
it's,
more drama than absolutely necessary is what I'm hearing.
yeah, no, never, never. Yeah. Yeah. But, sometimes drama is necessary. And so kind of finding that line can be a little
Yeah.
bit tricky.
Yeah. All right. The fourth one.
Yeah. Oh, our fourth fight. So this is the one that, that we're still sort of riding the high of right now. So there, there is west of my county, there is a county called Franklin County, and there's a river there called the Apalachicola River. The Apalachicola River is significant for a lot of reasons. If you've ever seen a map of the United States, you will notice that there's this kind of squiggly border between Georgia and Alabama, and the lower half of that is the Chattahoochee River. And the Chattahoochee River ultimately joins with another river called the Flint, and they form together the Apalachicola River, and that's around kind of the Florida border. So once you get into Florida, you're pretty much in the Apalachicola River there. So the Apalachicola River is the largest river in the state by water volume. It's got more species of fish than anywhere else in Florida. It's got more species of reptiles and amphibians than anywhere else on the continent. Uh,
Wow.
it is understood internationally as a global biosphere reserve, and it
How
is
wide is
something.
it?
Um, it's not that wide. I mean, you look at it, it's for us, it's like a mighty river, right? But by
Mm-hmm.
Florida standards, I would say 200 yards wide,
Okay.
300, something like that, something like that.
Bunch of
Yeah,
catfish in there.
bunch of catfish and monster cat.
Okay. All
monster
right,
guy.
just trying to get a feel for
Yeah.
it.
Oh yeah. 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 And a lot of interesting little sloughs and all sorts of little ways to kind of to explore and to find critters up in there. And there's a big deer hunting culture that occurs. It's interesting. Folks dog hunt out of boats along the Apalachicola River. And so that's a big thing. I mean, you'll see at the boat ramp along that river, at any point in the fall, you're going to see a lot of dogs and a lot of boats and, a lot of folks with radios. And it's, um, it's an interesting way of life that is out there. And what's important, especially about the Apalachicola River to us, is that it provides fresh water into our bay, Apalachicola Bay. And that allows for a healthy balance for our seafood industry, particularly for our oysters. And the oysters, we talked about a minute ago, but I mean, oysters, we used to be the oyster capital of the world in Apalachicola Bay. That's what we still say we are, and we're trying to get back. But we used to produce 90% of the oysters in the state and 10% of the oysters nationwide. And that was until the bay crashed in about 2012, 2013, thereabouts. Um, and there's a
What caused
combination of
that?
factors.
Oh yeah, okay.
There's a co-
That's where
there's a
you were going there.
combination. A lot of it was freshwater withdrawal from places like Atlanta. Atlanta gets a lot of the blame, but there's also a lot of agricultural withdrawal in South Georgia.
So they were
Um,
they were just depleting the river.
Depleting the river is a lot of it. Some of it may have to do a little bit with some of the dispersant I mentioned earlier from the oil spill. And, a lot of it is just it's a substrate problem, right? Like you don't have enough structure on the bottom to for the oysters to adhere to. And why is that? Well, because oysters are dying. And so when oysters die and they kind of get broken up and washed away, there's nothing
Oh,
for the new oysters to cling to.
okay.
So you have this vicious cycle.
Okay.
Um,
The carcasses of the old oysters are the habitat for the new.
right. And
Okay.
if you take a core sample of an oyster bed, you can go back thousands of years and you can find
Oh.
oysters that are ancient. Um,
Oh, wow.
and so we're at this place where, wild oyster harvesting used to be, that was the whole thing, right? You'd have guys offshore with these big tongs on these oyster boats, and they would tong up oysters. They put them on a boat and they, carry them back to shore and sell them. That was a way that thousands of people, about 4,000 people, made a living
Until
until
when?
about
Oh,
2012,
that was
2013.
that recently that it was
Yeah,
wild.
very
Okay.
recent, very recent. And so when I was a kid, I remember, just driving the coastline and mile after mile after mile, you just see all these oyster boats. And that has very recently stopped. Um, and so we have problems with our bay. We have problems with our river, but it is still one of the most, untouched, pristine wilderness areas that you can find in the Southeast. We
Oh,
also have a
you're about
tupelo
to hit
hunting
me.
industry.
You're about to hit me with something that's going to piss me off. I can tell.
Well, so we have all this. We've got our tupelo honey industry, by the way. We only make tupelo honey in two places in the world. It's the Apalachicola River Basin and out in the Okefenokee Swamp in southeast Georgia.
Okay.
So this is all sorts of things are reliant on this and thousands of jobs downriver. So that is to set the stage. Then we have an out-of-state oil company wants to come in and they want to drill right next to our river.
Of
They want to
course they
drill
do.
right next
Of
to the
course
river.
they do. Yeah.
And they don't even know if there's oil there. It's this exploratory. This is speculative oil drilling. And so you've got a lot of toxins that are going to go into that. You've got a lot of danger. This is going to be a site that's absolutely in the wilderness, in the backcountry. There's no monitoring realistically for this place.
They're going to have to build roads if they want to.
They got to build roads. And they roads were a big part of it too. They had to pull permits for roads. Um, and this site is, I mean, adjacent to, at some parts of the year, it's surrounded by a slough that feeds right into the Apalachicola River. And so here we have a state of Florida is investing tens of millions of dollars to restore Apalachicola Bay through programs at Florida State University, through all sorts of programs with our State Department of Environmental Protection. we're spending a lot of money to try to bring the oysters back. And then on the back of that, that same state, its bureaucrats, they decide that, oh yeah, let's just do oil drilling here too.
Okay, so this was federal or state land?
This was no, this was a private landowner. This is a timber company that leased it to this out of state oil company.
Okay, so how? Okay, but all right, so
the state has to issue the permit.
Okay,
to allow for it. That's why. So the state does have oversight.
Okay.
And so that was our latest fight, which, this one, the first one was local and the second one was kind of some state stuff. And then the third one involved the state legislature. This one gets even bigger than that, where we had to pass a law.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause once again, we have negligent government officials, this time at our State Department of Environmental Protection. And you got to go over their heads, right? And that's what a lot of this is just going over somebody's head. And this was one where I found out about this, Matt. I found out about this in a little bitty article that just mentioned it. This is in, I think, April of last year. Just mentioned, oh, by the way, there's a company, they're going to drill for oil in the Apalachicola River Basin. There's a public comment period. There have been 7 comments submitted. 6 are against it. 1 is in favor of it. And I was like, look, we can beat those numbers. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is a crazy thing to try to go up against, but I know we can beat those numbers. And so we got, in the course of a week, I think we may have gotten 800 comments submitted, something like that, which is
just
more
by working your channels.
And at this point, we've got an organization that kind of, we've got an email list, we've got folks who are, and that's a big tip as well, is to just keep the data, just record people's names and email addresses, everybody who shows up to any event, when folks are part of your online platforms on social media, you want to try to figure out who they are, get their email, all this stuff. So we at this point kind of have an alert system. And so we alert everybody, and that's how we get to 800. But that was more opposition than had ever been seen on an oil permit in Florida. It was actually more, as far as I can tell, than all previous permits combined. And we did that in like a week. And so then we got more and more, and it grew from there. And we kind of got in touch with our local riverkeeper organization. They kind of partnered with us, and really, I think it's more fair to say we partnered with them. They were the established organization that was doing a lot of this.
Good on you. That's one thing that really pisses me off, is when these nonprofits take sole responsibility for stuff that they were collaborators on. So
yeah, well, this one is a whole coalition. I mean, this becomes what we ultimately called the Kill the Drill Coalition. And so, we had the Riverkeeper, and we had the local aquaculture association, which is phenomenal. I mean, just
it sounds like none of these people knew about this until you
brought
attention to it.
I don't think it had been reported publicly very much. I think that the Riverkeeper folks were working on their legal strategy, right? They were already starting to think about how this could be approached.
Okay, they were working behind the scenes on it,
but we didn't know that at the time, and so it became kind of okay. So they can do the legal stuff, and we can do some of the political stuff and collaboration. And so it became kind of ultimately a big ball of folks working together. But it wasn't until that little article that it became like, oh, here's a public outcry.
Even the little article didn't do it. You had to draw attention to it after reading the little article.
Right. It was the little article, and then we took it, we pushed it out to our folks, and a lot of that too. I mean, we printed out flyers, we handed out flyers all around the community. We put a little QR code on the flyer to make it really easy for people to write in. The QR code takes you to a little form where you put in your email address, and it shoots off the email for you. All sorts of little things like that. But anyway, so we did all this. We got all this opposition. We got all these people to write into the DEP. They didn't care. They issued their support.
DEP, Department of Environmental Protection.
Environmental Protection.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, most states it's DEQ, isn't it?
It could be. I know there's DNR in some states. Ours is the DEP.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and they, you know, I mean, they were happy to go along with this. And they said, I mean, they would say, well, they check the boxes. They check the boxes. All we can do is if they meet the requirements, is say yes. And there's a lot of ways that I think they could have said no to it.
Mm.
Um, there are designations that protect the Apalachicola River that are special and that DEP was not considering. But regardless, that was their fallback argument: is our hands are tied. Uh, and so from there it became okay. Well, they didn't issue the permit yet, but they've given their support. They're saying they're going to issue the permit. So that's when the Riverkeeper, they filed a challenge to the notice of intent, to their attempt to issue the permit. So they said, okay, y'all are trying to issue this permit. We're going to slip in here with a lawsuit. And that meant that there was going to be a legal hearing, and that occurred in December of last year. So, you know, we had a judge look at the case, and that was happening on one end of town, was the start of the legal hearings. And then on the other end of town, we were creating a ruckus. So at this point, we have the Kill the Drill Coalition. We have many businesses, many nonprofits, um, all sorts of, I mean, from the National Wildlife Federation to the local Ducks Unlimited chapter to tattoo parlors and churches. Um, I mean, pick your organization. They were part of our coalition. And I mean, from the far left to the far right, everybody was like, this is a bad idea. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so we together, we orchestrated this protest at the state environmental headquarters in Tallahassee. So that's about probably a 2-hour drive for folks in Apalachicola, about an hour drive for me on my part of the coastline. And you know, according to one newspaper, 500 people showed up,
Mm.
right? And we sort of commandeered the entrance of our state's environmental headquarters, which is just like an evil looking building. I mean, it's this copper plated, tall, rectangular building. It doesn't look like where good people work. Um, and I say that as someone who worked there once too. I used to work there. Uh, and so it's a really good photo op. But so we did this, and and this is an enormous group effort. But there were classroom full of kids came on a school bus to be part of. Fifth graders
Oh
came. Some
man,
of them some
that's
of them spoke.
that's
You know,
lethal right there.
we had oyster farmers speaking. We had charter captains speaking. We had my dad speak. My dad owns a local business, so he spoke about the economic implications and what we learned from the last oil spill and what we need to know going forward and how we can't allow this to happen again. Right. This was an enormous event. We were shucking oysters too during the whole protest. So we
Oh,
showed up. We
nice.
showed up with Florida flags, and at this point we had these signs. So I'm holding up a sign that says "Save Apalachicola Bay." It's got a circle and a slash with an oil rig on it, and it's got a website. And
Yep.
so this is a website that I made where folks could go and they could learn about the issue, but they could also sign up to become part of the coalition. And if you look, it's killthedrillfl.org. If you go to that website, you'll see there's a wall of businesses and nonprofits that joined up. And so they were all there. It was a great event. We were there for like 45 minutes and we left. And we got the photos, we got the press, we took some videos, and that got a lot of attention. And so meanwhile, on the other end of town in Tallahassee, there's these administrative hearings happening where the legal challenge, it was a really, really nice juxtaposition to have energy
Mm-hmm.
and to really catapult the issue forward. So that's when, again, we got a little bit of statewide press coverage. And once again, once we, I think, had shown that level of community support, we had interest from the legislature. And it took a while, and there's a lot of this that I listened to your advocacy podcast, and there's a lot of this that I think maps well onto that, where we had
Okay.
to figure out how to do committee hearings, and we had to learn how to I mean, eventually we had to, right? We kind of had to help write a bill. Like there are things like that we all had to figure out. But the same two state lawmakers took this thing forward and they charged into the legislature and they said, "Hey, we cannot allow oil drilling in the Apalachicola River Basin. This is too big of a risk. People's livelihoods are at stake, right? And there's a time and a place for drilling. This is not it." And so we had oyster farmers testifying in the legislature. They were terrific. I mean, they were just to a person. They were brilliant. It ended up being that we had some charter captains, some local businesses. You're seeing some themes here, right?
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah,
lawmakers
yeah,
really
yeah.
appreciate hearing from folks who are economically invested, and also I think from hunters and from fishermen.
Yeah, like a wide stakeholder group.
Yeah, yeah, and and I think one of them is worth 20, 30, 40, 50 environmentalists. I mean, it's so much better to have
Right. Yep.
to have folks who are really bought in.
Yeah.
And yeah, so there was drama. There's always drama in the legislature, but passed our first committee unanimously, passed our second committee unanimously, and we started thinking maybe there's actually a chance, maybe this thing could go all the way. And there was a floor vote in the House of Representatives, and it was unanimous there. And then there was a floor vote in the Senate, and one person voted against it. But then later they were like, "I didn't mean to. I hit the wrong button." So so we had unanimous support in the legislature, and then we wanted to make sure that the governor understood the significance, and so we had some events that sort of were designed to kind of just show community support once again. We did some more oyster shucking, some more beer drinking at a bar along the coast, and had some folks show up there, and just kind of made sure that we stayed visible, and that we kept the right messengers out front. And ultimately,
this is all
Governor
stuff you're doing as you're waiting for it to be signed into law.
As we're hoping for it to be signed, trying to get it to be signed into law. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, Governor Ron DeSantis, he signed our bill. And what that did is it banned oil drilling in 1,100 square miles of the Apalachicola River Basin. It killed the project that was proposed. It killed 3 other projects that the company was attempting to move forward with. And it
this is huge. This is huge.
Sure that oil drilling
awesome.
cannot happen in this highly sensitive river basin.
Yeah.
So that was a year and a half compressed into a few minutes, but that was a really, really fun effort to be part of. And it really is. It's a huge joint effort. And I would encourage folks to look at all the other players that were involved. But Downriver Project, we were very happy to kind of be part of some of the legislative stuff and some of the organizing and just getting folks to show up to stuff.
Yeah. Last question.
Yeah.
What are you chasing now? What are you trying to prevent now?
Well, the nice thing about our organization is I don't think we always have to be fighting something, right? Like sometimes,
I agree.
There's nothing bad happening. Sometimes it's all okay.
That's the beauty of having an all volunteer organization.
We are not beholden to.
You're not trying. You don't have to drum
up an issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And so right now I'll say there's officially nothing, but there are some things we're looking at, and one of them is that the federal government is looking at dredging the Apalachicola River, which is a whole other nightmare for all sorts of reasons. But the government may try to harm our river again, and I think that could be something we look at.
They want to do that for shipping purposes?
Yeah. For very, very little barge traffic comes down that river, and there is some interest, it seems, from the government in trying to dredge. So that could be something. But I mean, beyond that, I think that a lot of this is, look, there's groups that try to change the culture, right? That's not what we are. We embrace our culture. This is who we want to be. And we're not trying to go against the way people live their lives. What we want to do is sort of help folks understand that, look, it is fully concurrent with hunting and fishing and going to church on Sunday and being outdoors to say, hey, there's enough is enough, right? We're going to stand up for our resources. We're going to stand up for our traditions. And so I think that I have a little bit of hope because it has worked and folks do seem to care. And there's a lot of folks who I never thought I would have seen involved in this kind of stuff who are now involved. And, it's a lot of organizations, but I'm proud to kind of be part of one of them and to really try to channel some of those voices that you don't always hear. And
Yeah.
that's been really
Yeah.
rewarding.
Yeah. Wow. What a great story.
Hey, well, thanks, Matt. Well, can I plug our website, by the way?
Yes, you
Can I
may.
tell folks where to learn more? So downriverproject.org is our website. And we also have an Instagram that I think is how you and I first connected, which is at Downriver Project. There's a lot on there about kind of how we've gotten here. There's some cool videos with folks, oyster farmers explaining what they're doing and why they care about these things. But ultimately, we are trying to defend the forgotten coast and just to make sure that we continue to keep our way of life.
I'm a huge supporter of your organization and the Forgotten Coast. So, if
well, hey
there's
man,
anything I can do to help, let me know.
Well, we need to get you down to visit.
Oh, I'd love that. I would love that.
If you are ever in the Florida Panhandle, please tell me.
Oh, okay.
I would love to have you down. Love to take you up some of the rivers and show you what we're talking about here.
Yeah, I would love it.
Hey, man.
All right. Thanks. Have a good evening.
Thanks for your time. Take care, Matt.
Bye.
Bye.